And we're back, guys. Today, we're just going to tackle on binge eating, and it's a topic that I wanted to talk about. We're just going to jump through some of the details, correct definitions of eating disorders. Specifically, I want to break it down to binge eating as it relates to my field. Also, I want to give you guys my experience with it, being a bodybuilder, competing for 6 years, and the styles of crazy eating habits that I've gone through, which binge eating and bulimia falls into that category as well. Breaking down, we're going to start off with eating disorders, a spectrum of abnormal eating patterns that eventually can endanger a person's health or increase the risk for other diseases. Generally, psychological factors play a key role. Disordered eating, okay, this is a different definition. Disordered eating, an abnormal change in eating pattern related to an illness, a stressful event, or a desire to improve one's health or appearance. If it persists, it can lead to an eating disorder, the previous one that I just explained. As much as there's labels for these things, such as an eating disorder, sometimes you really can't narrow it down to a correct definition because people, their lives change. They go through multiple eating styles. Same as you may like a certain food when you're a kid and now you no longer like it. And it just continues towards little habits where, maybe you like really salty foods and then it just changed to sweets later on in your life just because you grew up eating nothing but salty foods and you just maybe are repulsed by some of those things. I'm just giving a very vague analogy. But what I'm trying to say is that you can't label down an eating disorder based on what you like or what you preference. It's habits. So an eating disorder, in my perspective, are eating habits. It's an easier term rather than saying disorder because some people may have really good habits. Some people may have really bad habits. Maybe eating too clean could also be classified as an eating disorder as well, right? So on topic, we're going to stick with binge eating. Binge eating disorder, an eating disorder marked by repeated episodes of binge eating and a feeling of loss of control. There's a key there. The diagnosis is based on a person having an average of at least 2 binge eating episodes per week for 6 months. Now, this is kind of one of those things where it's after hearing that, do you say to yourself man, am I classified in that category of a binge eating disorder? Because when you think about it, it's 2 episodes of uncontrolled eating. Is that just going out 2 nights a week with your friends and then after getting drunk, you totally binge? Because I know plenty of people that do that, but I wouldn't at all consider them having a binge eating disorder, at least not in my perspective. I think you would have to classify this, again, this is just my opinion, but I think you would have to classify this and say to yourself, how many times a week do I sit alone? I wouldn't consider binge eating a social part either. I don't think I've ever seen somebody go absolutely crazy on food in a social setting. So I would say, how many times a week are you by yourself and you're kind of just gorging yourself while at the same time you're thinking, this is terrible for me, I shouldn't be doing that. If you're doing that 2 times a week, then I would consider, hey, I might be binge eating. This might be what I am doing. This may be a disorder that I have. So for my standalone purpose and my history with bodybuilding, almost every single person I know does this. It's a binge, right? You would say after you get off stage and you've dieted down your single-digit body fat percentage, you've been starving for months to get to an unhealthy level of body fat percentage, and then you get off of finals for your show and you binge eat. I've done it multiple times. I wouldn't consider you in that part of a binge eating disorder because part of that is a survival mechanism. And a survival mechanism is when you're so starved down that your body will do anything to eat food. All you're doing is thinking about food. Every thought in your head is consumed with food because your body thinks it's dying because you're starving to get to an unhealthy level of body fat. So your body's just food, 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 food. And then when you let that gate open to go eat, a little bit uncontrolled, you go out to a restaurant, you're at home, you go buy food, whatever. When you open up that gate, you do binge eat. To the definition of binge eat, you will eat until you get sick type of style of eating. Again, it you're not in control. It's your body's survival mechanism that's in control. So again, I wouldn't consider that part of a binge eating disorder because it's not a repetitive thing. You're not doing it multiple times a week. You're not doing it for months on end. The thing with binge eating that I would consider it the perfect label of is that when you are binge eating, you're having conscious thoughts about it being bad. It's almost like you're self-indulging, but you're telling yourself, I shouldn't be doing this. This is so bad. I'm going to have to pay for this later. It's very destructive for your mental awareness, I would say, because you're sitting there knowing that it's bad, but you're contributing to the process of committing the act. Binge eating disorder, formerly known as compulsive overeating, this is another name. I think compulsive overeating kind of sounds a little bit friendlier. People with this disorder chronically consume massive quantities of food. Sufferers are typically obese. However, not all obese people binge eat. Diagnosis of binge eating disorder is based on a person having an average of 2 binge eating episodes per week for 6 months. Such episodes often are triggered by emotions such as frustration, anger, depression, and anxiety. Okay, me being a nutritionist coach and me coaching a lot of lifestyle, I would say 80% of my client base are lifestyle people. The biggest trigger for binge eating or compulsive overeating, I like that one, is emotions, right? It's depression or anxiety. Every week I will get a text from a client that says, hey, I had a stressful day at work or something happened and I just let loose and I was overeating. Now that, I think we can all agree that that is a sign of comfort, right? Something stressful in the brain has happened and we don't like it, so we need to immediately comfort ourselves with food. Now, if you're having that problem, my resolve for that would be, how do I solve the problem? Why immediately are you thinking about food? It's almost like a selfish tactic, I would say. I've never really done this because I'm not an emotional person. I don't act off of emotion, where I know some people do. But how I act and how I do not resort to self-indulging in food is that I immediately try to solve a problem. A hypothetical situation, man, I got a flat tire on my way home and I had to change my tire. It took an hour, whatever. And it was so stressful. And then people would come home and just start snacking on cookies. That's a type of situation that would happen. Whereas me, I would go home, I would fix the problem, figure out how to prevent this from happening again. Do I have a jack in my car? Do I have like AAA? Do I have a tow truck to call or whatever? I immediately resort to having proactive actions happening for the next time that situation may arrive again. So being proactive in the situation itself, being positive, being proactive, problem solving is key, and not sitting there wallowing in your misery or depression and anxiety saying, woe is me, and I need to self-indulge. I need to make myself happy because I'm not happy right now. You'll be happy when the problem is solved, so solve the problem. So the criteria for binge eating. Current episodes of binge eating associated with at least 3 behavioral, such as eating large amounts when not physically hungry. I've done that. Feeling disgusted or guilty after overeating. I feel disgusted if I eat a cookie. Much more rapidly than normal. As a bodybuilder, my God, that's all I do. Still to this day, even when I try to tell myself to slow down when I'm eating, I'm like, I gotta finish this food, I gotta finish this food. And I think it's just a habit I created. It's not a really good habit because you could actually choke on your food from not chewing it all the way through. And the regular use of purging, fasting, and excessive exercise. So another disorder that's also, I think, should be really closely looked at when you're looking at binge eating is bulimia. I'll show the link here in a little bit. Bulimia, an eating disorder marked by consumption of large amounts of food at one time, quote, binge eating, followed by a behavior. The behavior is the giveaway, such as self-induced vomiting, use of laxatives, excessive exercise, fasting, or other practices to avoid weight gain. You could kind of classify binge eating as people just eating, oh my God, I'm stressed or whatever, and then they eat, but they're not worried about their weight, okay? Now, bulimia is the same thing because binge eating is included in bulimia. There's repercussions to suffer after, purposeful repercussions, like you're putting it on yourself, which I think runs rampant in the fitness industry. The amount of people I know, clients who I coach, who do this to themselves, where they'll go out and socialize, they'll go get hammered and drink, or they'll go eat some BS, terrible meal or whatever, and then the next day they'll tell me, hey, I went out and I did this and I'm trying to do 2 hours of cardio, and I'm like, and I will tell them, do not stop. Don't do that. You are creating a terrible, terrible behavior and habits. Like, you cannot go out and commit those acts and then try to justify those acts with 2 hours of cardio. That's just not how it works. You're going to binge eat, or if you're going to go out and drink, or you know that you're going to do something bad with food. What practices could you do it to not do it the next day? Take it day by day. You don't need to go out and, oh my God, I just did 3 hours of a workout or whatever. You're punishing yourself, and that is extremely terrible. You should not be punishing yourself for overindulging with eating. It's probably the biggest thing I see with athletes and people in the fitness industry. Just enjoy yourself for that little bit of time, because then you won't even be able to enjoy yourself in the long run. If you like, what if it's your birthday? What if you're going out for Christmas or Thanksgiving? I mean, this is a big thing. Like, during the holidays, people like, oh, I worked out for 3 hours on Thanksgiving Day just so I could eat. Why are you doing that? You're punishing yourself. What's the point? Why don't you just stay in shape all year long to where when you do go eat like that, it has zero effect on you? It's very possible to do that if you have corrective, positive habits that you're continuously doing throughout the year on a day-to-day basis, where this one day has zero effect on you. Some effects of bulimia are reoccurrent episodes of binge eating, reoccurrent purging behavior, excessive exercise or fasting, excessive concern about body weight or shape and absence of anorexia, self-evaluation influenced by body shape and weight. That's pretty much the driving force for bulimia. You want to stay in shape so bad, but you cannot control yourself with your eating habits, which is a lot of people. It's crazy. Like, I went through that in the beginning of my bodybuilding career, where I just wanted to eat because I was starving myself to try to stay in shape. Like, I was like, I need to have a six-pack all year long. Now that I've been through everything, it's not worth it. I love food. I enjoy food, but I eat to maintain a healthy lifestyle now. Bulimia seems to occur most often in people who have an intense desire to nurture themselves with food, but who are also strongly influenced by our societal obsession with thinness. One description of people with bulimia characterizes them as being obsessed with food but repulsed by fats. In contrast to people with anorexia, people with bulimia focus more on food than on thinness. Psychologists who have treated patients with bulimia have found that they typically did not receive sufficient nurturing during their formative years. That's pretty deep. Whereas families of anorexic parents tend to have had a lot of rigidly defined roles and rules. Families of bulimic patients tend to lack structure. Roles may be loosely defined. Parents are often described as distant, judgmental. Significant family conflict usually exists. Patients often feel that their families failed to provide an adequate sense of security and protection. Now, that's a little bit deeper. What I just listed is really deep. That goes into, I don't even want to touch on that. That stuff's very, very sensitive. If you recognize something in what I just said, you should probably go seek out a therapist. What are some things we could do to combat binge eating and bulimia? I'm going to give my opinion, is these are things that I follow to this day to help me stop from overeating. Not so much like gorging myself, but I can eat and eat and eat and eat, and I can never get full. I don't even remember the last time I got. That's what I'm severely grateful for about bodybuilding. Bodybuilding has taught me measuring my food and tracking my food. It has taught me portion control. With me never being able to get full, portion control really has given me a great sight of what I'm able to eat. Like, now that I can eyeball food, I can understand how much I'm eating. Okay, this is maybe a little bit too much, or this is like nothing. Like, I go to a restaurant, can I get a 7-ounce steak? And I'll be like, this is clearly 3 ounces. I know my size portions type of stuff. So portion control has drastically helped me out. If you want to start weighing your food and measuring everything, you could get a little obsessed with that, but if you don't think that you'll get obsessed with that, then 100% you should really go for that. I would say with being a nutritionist and coaching people for an amount of years, the biggest thing I try to do is get them to understand portions. Where the diets I give people is a plug-in style of dieting, where I have Oreos, pancakes, I have Taco Bell, McDonald's, I have alcohol, I have all that stuff on my diet because it's calorie controlled, but I'm teaching people portion control. So in the long term, when they do go out and socialize, or if they may get a binge eating episode happening, they know they could eyeball things and start to say, this is a little bit too much food, let me pull back. Another one to do is don't look at the scale, right? So if you fall into the category of bulimia where you're obsessed with physique and weighing yourself. You know, people could get very obsessed with numbers on a scale. And that's actually a really good thing bodybuilding has taught me as well, is that the scale doesn't really tell the truth. Whether you binge ate on Chipotle or something and then you have all of this sodium and salt in you, well, sodium holds water with it. Or if you ate a ton of carbs, for every 1 gram of carb you eat, you store 4 grams of water. So if you just eat a little bit more carbs than you normally do, your body's going to retain a lot of water. What does all of that encompass? It means you're going to be heavier on the scale. Your scale weight is going to be heavier. So if you have a binge eating episode and then you wake up the next day and you step on the scale and you freak out and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm 3 pounds heavier. Why did I do that? Don't freak out. You may want to go to the gym and go do 2 hours of cardio to punish yourself and create this terrible, drastic, negative behavior where you're beating yourself up, when in reality it's just water storage. And if you just drink more water, if you got a gallon or 2 gallons of water in, your body would flush that water out naturally. There's very easy solutions to these things. The scale will freak you out. So if you fall into the bulimia category, step off the scale, go based off of how you feel, go based off of how your clothes feel. That's the biggest one. If you notice your clothes are getting tight, maybe it's time to pull back on that food or binge eating or a little bit or going out or whatever if your clothes are getting tight. Another one is understanding your hunger cues. When you're eating, understand when you're actually hungry. I would say a lot of people, especially people that I coach, they're not very hungry. When I get them to start drinking 130 ounces of water a day, which is around a gallon, they are never hungry. Their hunger goes away. And your body doesn't have a cue to send you when it's thirsty. When your stomach growls, you may not be hungry. You actually just may be thirsty. Your body is around 75% of water, and your body does what's called hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is the main component of every contraction of your body, from muscle contractions to major vital organ contractions. Your heart, all of your organs function off of hydrolysis. Hydrolysis is the involvement of water, fluid contractions. That's hydrolysis, so it requires water. Your body's 75% water, you need more water. So majority of the time I would say you're not hungry, you just need more water. So start intaking more water to understand your actual hunger cues. And then when you're getting full, understand that. I would say that's the biggest one. When you're starting to get just a little bit full, you get a hint of it, cut it down right there. You got to start controlling yourself a little bit more. You have to have some type of discipline if you're trying to fix these problems. Another one is my favorite one. It's probably low calorie, high volume food, right? So another one, if you're kind of like me where you just feel like you never get full, low calorie foods that are big in volume will really help you out. Popcorn is a big one, super high in fiber. You're gonna have to do a lot of cooking where you're making like your own protein ice cream or protein pizookie, protein whatever, French toast, stuff that gets you full, but it's low in calorie. I mean, eating a tub of salad with chicken on there but with no dressing or something where you could just mindlessly eat and eat and eat, but it's so low calorie it's not going to affect you in the long run. That has really helped me out because I'm a big eater. I always say there's like 2 types of people that eat food for taste and people that eat food for volume. I can eat the crappiest tasting things, but if it has a lot of volume, I'll eat it. I'm a volume guy. Another one is understanding your micronutrients. Not micro. Micronutrients are severely important when it comes to your health. Understanding what you are actually eating will help you from binge eating or creating some type of bulimia disorder. And this is kind of where you're eating food just for the protection of your health, where you're eating sweet potatoes for your vitamin C, you're eating your whole eggs for vitamin D, you're eating your red meat for iron and your B vitamins. I think this is a very good, smart approach. You start to become a little computeristic, and by that I mean you're looking at things as like a data sheet. It's how I eat. I would say 50% of the time I like to look at food and understand what micronutrients I'm getting. Does this have magnesium? Does this have iron? Does this have my vitamin D intake? I like to say it's a smarter approach because you're eating for what's optimal in your health. And when you start to think like that a little bit, it does stop you from eating a lot of BS if you're more health conscious in that perspective. It's just one of these things that's helped me out. And then the other one is exercise. And I know this falls in the category of bulimia, but I put this out there because I would say about 60% of my clients who come to me are not exercising at all. And it's specifically why they need a diet and why they need to cut down on weight and for weight loss purposes. You could get away with eating a lot more food if you are having a higher calorie output, meaning you're getting up, you're walking, even your fidgeting burns a lot of calories. This is what I'm doing. Like when I'm talking, I'm moving my hands a lot. If you're just getting up, walking around a lot more around your house, it doesn't need to be like this crazy CrossFit style of workout. You could simply just go out for walks all the time. It will help you. One great thing that Stan Efferding brought into this world was the 10-minute walk, meaning before every time you eat, you go out for a 10-minute walk. And you almost unconsciously create this positive, energetic behavior towards eating. Even if you eat and then after you go out for a 10-minute walk, you're eating calories and you're burning calories. It's a great, I think, trade-off perspective to have for people who don't, like if you don't want to go to the gym or you don't want to exercise, you don't want to do all those crazy things, just turn your energy output up to where your eating won't have that bad of a negative health effect on you. Like if you're severely overweight or if you're having binge eating episodes, if you create that with walking, it should help you out in some sort of context. And as always, if you guys are interested in any of my coaching programs, I am a nutritionist, and the definitions that I read to you in this video was straight out of my college nutritional science book, 101, baby. If you guys are interested in my programs, whether you want to lose weight, gain weight, or you're interested in competing or just learning how to diet or anything like that, feel free to reach me out. My email is in the description. You can sign up for my programs right there. And as always, thank you guys for checking out my video, and I'll catch you in the next one.